So let's talk a little about this AI stuff, about transforming the Google search results. Curious what you have to say about that.
With both the algorithms coming out, that is RankBrain and BERT, I've been studying them really extensively, trying to understand how they're working, what are they doing. With BERT coming out and trying to actually understand the essence of content. What previously we have been taught and we've been doing is optimize number of the keyword density in your content. Over the period of time in the last 4 years, what I've noticed was that has changed a lot. The true essence of what the content actually is, or what it's addressing, is something that is really important, which has come over the period of time. I've noticed that has changed. A lot of quality of the content that is being put out is changing. I saw people stuffing keywords back in India as well. That used to happen a lot. So like we were always being taught about the difference between black hat and white hat SEOs. Number of agencies that existed back home are so much that everyone would use different techniques to rank. And I saw a lot of black hat SEO back home. Mm-hmm. While we were not taught that, we always were told what not to do. But right. we saw that happening, and most of the clients that we got, we had to kind of revamp the entire SEO structure, or revamp the entire SEO that was previously done on that, because there was a lot of negative SEO that was impacting the site, right? So with all that being said, and how the content that used to be in the past has evolved until today, I believe that content is still the king and will always be the king. The only way we write content is going to change. So there's this one experiment that I did. I referred a lot of blogs like Medium and Quora, and I tried to understand how, in what region people are typing or writing. English is a universal language, but there's a different way everyone speaks. There's a different way how people structure their content. Mm-hmm. So what we tried to do is, I tried to analyze how people back home in India are writing their statements in Quora and Medium, and I tried to use the same verbiage in my content back home. So that way, what I started seeing is, not just for the crawlers, but the users were enjoying the content. They were actually getting engaged with it. Mm-hmm. I saw a lot of shares, a lot of engagement on my content. And then people started reading more blogs as well. So if that kind of research is put, and if people start optimizing their content that way, even across the world, I think we can even see that these algorithms are going to positively impact us. See that our content is actually rich. We are doing everything that we can to improve our experience for the users. We are doing everything that we can to improve our content quality for the users, right? So with that being said, I think both these algorithms, a lot of people think, and there's this synergy that both of them, like BERT is replacing RankBrain, but it's not. It's actually working together, right? So like where RankBrain is trying to identify different variations of keywords, BERT is actually trying to understand the intent behind those keywords, right? If we understand both of these together, we can do a lot when it comes to writing blog content or structuring your content in a blog, right? If you understand these two algorithms well, I think your content is going to perform better. And I have this like studies where I have this brand called Purple, right? Yeah. A mattress company. How did they manage to rank for a brand name that is so generic, which if someone is searching for purple, the intent behind searching that word should be ranking a color. But now if you check, the mattress company is ranking, right? So it was a careful combination of technical SEO and PR, right? So I also believe a lot that linkless mentions are something that is huge moving forward, because it's not just getting backlinks, but having positive sentimental reviews about yourself in online space is going to help you build that authority as a brand, or creating that awareness in terms of for Google as well, right? So that is what I think in terms of how AI is transforming search. I think it's a little bit different to talk about that right now. So if I deep dive into the technicalities, how they're doing it, I think it's going to take us a long time to discuss that, right? But just to understand, I can conclude that understand these two algorithms really well, so that you can structure your content in a way that's going to help your users. And then it's going to kind of help in terms of Google as well, where it's going to look at you in a different perspective. It's going to give you that authority.
So when Google says there's no way to really optimize for RankBrain or BERT,
yes.
It's kind of true, because as long as you're building content that your users want, which we said in the first part of this interview, it kind of is that feedback loop where just think about the users, write the content for the users. You don't even have to think about RankBrain or BERT. Those algorithms are really designed for Google to understand the query better, the intent of the query, and then matching it to the content that you're building for your users. So it wasn't really about Google. When we're SEOs, we think about how can we optimize for Google. Google, on the other hand, is like, how can we optimize our algorithms to rank the best content that's on the web for searchers?
Yes.
And we're kind of like trying to do the same thing, but as long as we step back a little bit and say, you know what, just build content that our users really want, Google will most likely do the rest. Obviously, you need your title tags, you need to make sure it's indexable and stuff like that. So it is kind of that feedback loop. And back in the old days, just like content was always king. It really wasn't. Back, I don't know how long you've been reading the history of SEO.
Yeah.
There was Jill Whalen, who was the most prominent white hat speakers back in the early 2000s, like 1999, 2000. And she was always fighting with the more link building side of things, which is not really, back then it wasn't black hat. It was just like links are more important than content. And it was true. Like you could just get links and you could rank for anything you wanted without having really great content. You could have a one-page website with an image and a couple words on it and rank for whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
But then she ultimately won because her concept was like, if you have great content, people will want to link to it. And SEO is like, why bother having great content if you could just get a bunch of links to it with doing little work, which I'm sure you had experience with back when you were doing SEO years ago. So it is the point where Google's at this point where they're really able to understand that intent based on the content that's written, and then automatically be able to say, all right, the links, the content, all these other signals they have, hundreds of little signals, this content really should rank and should not, or should rank well.
Absolutely.
And it's just that cycle and so forth. And RankBrain and BERT are part of that. But all these core updates and all these other things are about obviously making sure quality is there.
Just like passage indexing that came like a month ago, right?
January.
January, yeah. And then we started seeing how. So I used to work with these. What can we call this? With these FAQ pages that would list all the FAQs on just one page, right? There was a time when if we are searching for a specific FAQ, that would not we would not rank at all. But when we separated that to different pages, we started ranking. But now, ever since passage indexing is out, we don't have to do that anymore. You can have all the FAQs on one page, and then we could rank for every specific question that you have on that FAQ page, right? So it keeps changing, it's evolving. That is something that we love. But yes, I have a Python script that I've written myself that calculates BERT score for a specific piece of content that I have on my page, right?
Is that public or no? Is that a public tool that you made or no?
No, it's just a script that I run.
Okay.
I just put a URL and it runs for that specific piece of content that I have on my page. It scores it out of 10, so I get to know how is Google able to identify the intent for which keywords I'm trying to rank for, right? So I've actually created that Python script myself while I was studying at school for a project, and then I've been using that for myself at work as well now.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to see it. If you want to make it public, you could give people a URL.
Sure, absolutely. I'll just put it on my LinkedIn.
All right, you put it on LinkedIn. All right, so follow him on LinkedIn, and hopefully you'll be able to see that. All right, let's move on to this last topic. It's a little bit darker, right?
Yes.
You specifically said it's how brands are using UI UX hacks like dark patterns or manipulating consumer behavior on their websites and so forth. I'd rather you explain it, so go ahead.
Yeah. So there's this concept that I came across while I was studying back home in India and in my master's degree as well, that is called dark patterns. A lot of these brands, I won't name something, but there's a certain e-commerce company that if you want to delete an account for them, you have to go through 16 steps on their website, then call a customer care representative, and then they will convince you why not to delete an account, right? And then after you do that, it still doesn't hurt the business because anyway, no one wants to go through those many steps on a specific website, right? So everything that a business does in terms of UI and UX that is not going to hurt them or is going to benefit the business is called a dark pattern, right? A lot of these businesses I saw, there's this one example where e-commerce websites just sneak items in your cart when you're just about to check out.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize it, but they make the payment and they realize, okay, I've made a payment for something else. Now why bother to just return it, right?
Right. Sometimes they subscribe you to a service after you buy something. That's the most annoying.
Yeah.
Like the insurance things and stuff like that. They just add things after the fact.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's this, and then Google came out and said that we're going to start penalizing people who are sneaking items into cart because it started checking that. I think they spoke about it for a long time, and then one of the Search Central Live is when it actually came out, right? So there's a very thin line between kind of giving a good experience to the users and then doing something that's going to benefit you. Like, let's think about using color codes to guide users to click on things. If you ever see something in green or something in bold, you tend to click on that more rather than if you see something that is not highlighted enough.
Right.
So let's think about two buttons on our buy now or checkout, right? So like, let's think about buy now and let's think about cart. Click add to cart, right? What do you want users to do on your product page? You want them to click on buy now,
right?
So that it's going to minimize the step and they're going to make the purchase, right? If you highlight that in a little bit bold, you change the color to green, you're going to see a lot of clicks change on that. That is what study has said. That is what we have been studying for a long time, right? But what users are doing now is they're using this to guide consumer behavior on their website. They're tricking users into doing things that they're not supposed to. They're creating all these meshes using UI and UX where closing an account is deep down somewhere which can't be found. In terms of SEO, I don't think most of this is hurting SEO right now, but moving forward, when a user is going to get frustrated on a website, that's when it's going to start hurting SEO. Right. That's where it's going to start hurting your rankings.
Right. We've seen a lot of examples with SEO, back with the mobile intrusive ads, where they get in the way. Also with having ads in the block where the contents are, that meshed in with it kind of looks like content, but it's really not. Yes. We've seen it with more recently with obviously the page experience update with the cumulative layout shift, where the page jumps up and down. You might click on something by accident wrong. It might not be done intentionally, but it's a bad user experience.
Yes.
So Google's definitely been doing this on the SEO front, but more so with the Chrome browser. We've seen a lot of things where Google's been like saying, this is bad for users with Chrome, and we're going to go ahead and like warn people when they go to the website, either the site's not HTTPS, maybe the checkout process is a little messed up. So Google's been doing a lot more so with Chrome versus necessarily with SEO or with rankings and so forth.
And with a lot of over the last few years, with a lot of privacy issues that people have had in terms of tracking and cookies, and then these long agreements that people like tend to not read and just click, and where things like that are damaging user experience but are benefiting the businesses, right? So those practices that I've been studying, if you want to just look up dark patterns, it's just search darkpatterns.org, and then you're going to get what dark patterns is. There are millions of patterns that are listed there, and then you might be able to identify that, yes, I've come across this on a lot of websites, right? Google yet has not come out and said that we are banning these, like we are penalizing people who are practicing these activities, but I think it's just a matter of time when people are educated and they understand how businesses are tricking us, and then that's going to be penalized. So I think in the future, where UI, UX hacks or designs that are tricking users or driving consumer behavior on a specific website, I think in the future, Google is going to kind of start penalizing. And I think the cart penalization.
The cart example was interesting because Google generally would not add stuff to people's carts.
Yes.
And then I think a year or so ago, there was an article saying Google's now adding stuff to your cart and it's increasing your abandonment rate. They're adding stuff to the cart, not checking out. And Google's like, well, no, it's really for Google merchant policies where we have to double check that the price you have on your product page is the exact price you have on your checkout page. And I think that's actually going live August 6th. So it went live already on August 6th in terms of the Google merchant policy page. And their thing was like, you're allowing us to go to your part and adding stuff to your cart because of the Google merchant policy. The question is, how are they going to know if you subscribe to something after the fact? 30 days later, you got to build. It's hard for them to know that unless they're actually hitting checkout and putting a credit card in and then tracking to see what their credit cards show. So it would be interesting to see how deep Google takes this to see those patterns. I know there's some examples of Google where somebody was. This is probably 10 years ago. Somebody was specifically being mean to their customers, like almost abusing their customers because it would lead to those customers leaving more reviews, even though they were negative, and also maybe even linking to the site because he wanted those links and those reviews, even if they were negative, because Google was like, oh, lots of reviews, lots of links, that site should rank better. And then Google came out with an algorithm, which I don't even know if it still exists, but basically saying if those things are negative sentiment, it might end up hurting you if it's really
exactly.
negative.
At this point of time, we recommend a lot of the clients that I'm working with to kind of go over an online reputation management campaign where we go ahead and scrape. So I have these Python scripts in place that scrapes Instagram, that scrapes Twitter, and it gets all these all these reviews and comments of users and identifies the intent behind those, right? Identifies if it's positive or negative, doing an n-gram analysis. I have these in place so that I have not seen an impact yet where positive and negative reviews are affecting or bothering us, but definitely moving in the future, I think negative online sentiment is going to play a huge role in SEO.
Either way, you want to make sure your customers are treating their customers right, because ultimately it can hurt them in the long run. So that's great. Anything else you want to talk about while you're here, or should we just close it out?
We can close it out. It's just that if anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn, you guys can. And then I have pretty cool stuff that I'm working with in Python. I'll be happy to share my scripts with everyone. Like, they're free to use. If anyone could reverse engineer them and make them better, faster, because a few of them run in loops and take a long time to process, right? So if anyone has that, I'll be really glad to kind of get that help.
Cool. And it's just LinkedIn. You're not on Twitter so much. You're not on other stuff.
Not on Twitter so much, but yes, LinkedIn.
All right, so I'll put his LinkedIn in the frame below. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much, Barry.
And if anybody wants to reach out to Udit, just feel free to reach out to him on LinkedIn. I appreciate it.